back to the Black Star universe. Today I got a character introduction of Cord. Jahari, Langston. Here pretty soon I'll be dropping his volume 1, so be on the lookout. Don't forget to like the video, comment. And if you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Let's get into it. Jahari Langston was born in Des Moines, Iowa, on December 5th, 1992. His early life was marked by instability and hardship, as he was abandoned by his biological parents and placed into the foster system at a young age. His earliest memories are of different homes, each one offering a mixture of brief comforts and emotional turmoil. Jahari's foster families were often strict, demanding, and emotionally distant. This left him feeling isolated and unwanted, and he soon learned to fend for himself emotionally. Though his foster homes were often restrictive, Jahari was a brilliant child. He found solace in books, especially those about animals, science, and the night. He became fascinated by nocturnal creatures, bats, owls, and other creatures that thrived in darkness. The way they adapted to their environments, their survival mechanisms, fascinated him, and he immersed himself in studying them whenever he could. As a result, Jahari excelled academically, especially in science, and was often recognized for his academic achievements. However, his emotional isolation made it difficult for him to form lasting connections. He became somewhat of an outsider, focused more on intellectual pursuits than on socializing. He struggled with the notion of family, always yearning for a sense of belonging but never quite feeling like he fit in. His foster families, though caring in their own way, were controlling and emotionally distant, and Jahari often rebelled against their rules. These rebellions pushed him further into his own world, where books and research became his refuge. By the time Jahari reached high school, his academic excellence had earned him a scholarship to a prestigious college. He moved away from Des Moines to pursue his dream of studying zoology, specializing in nocturnal creatures. College was a transformative time for him. He found a sense of purpose in his studies and began to develop a deep interest in genetics and evolutionary biology. While other students spent their time socializing, Jahari was buried in his research, often staying up late into the night, poring over scientific journals and studying animal behavior. Though he still found it hard to connect with others on an emotional level, Jahari's passion for his studies earned him the respect of professors and peers. It was during his time in graduate school that he first became aware of the genetic disorder that had been quietly affecting his health for years. Jahari had been diagnosed with a rare, terminal illness, one that had no known cure. This revelation only deepened his sense of isolation. He began to feel like he was running out of time, and the idea of death hanging over him added a layer of urgency to his work. In his final year of graduate school, Jahari learned about a top-secret government project, Project Nocturnal. The project aimed to study and manipulate nocturnal creatures for military applications, and they were looking for scientists with expertise in genetics and animal behavior. Jahari applied for the program, desperate for a way to save himself from the terminal condition that loomed over him. His expertise in nocturnal animals, combined with his growing knowledge of genetics, made him an ideal candidate for the project. Little did he know, the project's true objectives went far beyond what he initially imagined. After being recruited by Project Nocturnal, Jahari moved to a highly classified government lab. The project was an ambitious undertaking, with the goal of using genetics to create superhuman soldiers, capable of surviving extreme conditions and carrying out dangerous missions. Jahari's role was to study the genetic material of nocturnal creatures, particularly bats, and use that information to unlock human potential. Though initially excited by the opportunity to further his research, he was unaware of the true scope of the government's interest in his work. The project involved experimenting with the DNA of vampire bats, creatures known for their ability to thrive in darkness and their ability to survive on blood. Driven by his own scientific curiosity and his desperation to find a cure for his illness, agreed to participate in the experiment. He hoped that by manipulating the genetic material of these creatures, he might be able to unlock a cure for himself. However, a mishap during one of the experiments exposed him to contaminated vampire bat blood. The blood, altered through a series of genetic manipulations, interacted with Jahari's DNA in unpredictable ways. Within hours, his body began to change. He became stronger, faster, more agile, but at the cost of a growing hunger for blood. His skin took on an unnatural pallor, and his senses became heightened to an almost terrifying degree. At first, Jahari was horrified by the transformation. He was no longer human in the traditional sense. His senses felt heightened. His strength was greater than ever, but his body also craved blood raw, unfiltered blood. The more he gave in to the hunger, the stronger it became, and he quickly realized he could no longer control the monstrous instincts that came with his new form. His transformation into quarterback vampire hybrid was complete. Jahari kept his transformation a secret from everyone at Project Nocturnal, despite the newfound strength and abilities. The physical changes terrified him. His alter ego Cord was everything he feared about his monstrous nature, primal, violent, and uncontrollable. He knew that if the government discovered what had happened to him, they would either use him as a weapon or terminate him as a failed experiment. The project's ultimate goal was never to help people like him. It was about creating soldiers, weapons, and tools for their own purposes. The thought of being used as an experiment, or worse, discarded, was too much for Jahari to bear. Jahari began using biometric safeguards and emotion-suppressing devices to control the transformation. He isolated himself further, avoiding any contact with others as much as possible. But the hunger for blood could not be easily suppressed. His anger, frustration, and fear would trigger the transformation, and when that happened, his need for blood became overwhelming. The more he struggled to keep his secret, the more difficult it became to maintain control over his powers. Jahari's fears were further compounded when the government grew suspicious of his work. An assistant was assigned to monitor him and report on his progress, heightening Jahari's anxiety. He began to question the true motives of Project Nocturnal and realized that the government had been using him as a pawn from the very beginning. His work was not to save humanity, but to create weapons beings like him, who could be controlled and deployed for any number of purposes. As the pressure of his secret grew, so did Jahari's resolve to escape. He began to research ways to reverse or permanently control his transformation, but every experiment seemed to bring him further into darkness. The more he learned about his condition, the more he realized that he was both the solution and the problem. If he could control his transformation, he might be able to use it to his advantage and expose the dark truth about Project Nocturnal. But if he lost control, he feared he would become a weapon of destruction, no better than the things the government wanted to create. Jahari kept a close eye on his assistant, whom he suspected was watching him more closely than he had been told. Every move he made was calculated, every experiment carefully controlled. He knew that if he were ever exposed, it would mean the end of his career, and possibly his life. His greatest fear was that the government would discover his transformation and take the decision out of his hands. Jahari, now secretly calling his monstrous Psycord, would rather face the consequences of his actions than be manipulated into becoming something he hated. And so, with each passing day, he worked toward one goal: escape. He knew he had the power to break free from the government's grip, but the price of that freedom would be steep. Jahari Langston, now known as Cord, was a man torn between his humanity and the monster he had become. With the weight of his secret pressing down on him, he would do whatever it took to survive and to expose the truth about Project Nocturnal. Every morning when you wake up and stare into that mirror, understand this: the one staring back is your savior, your soldier, your comeback story. That reflection, that's the one who's gonna drag you out the dirt, wipe the blood off your face, and tell you, stand up, we ain't done yet. Keep pushing, keep rising, you got this. You a lucky motherfucker if you're seeing this shit. You stayed the whole time, even past the outro. You know when I said Chords Volume 1 is coming soon, I meant that literally in this video. Those that left too early will just have to come back and finish it. Let's crack this bitch off. The first thing Jahari noticed was the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that made your skin itch. The kind that came after something had happened, something awful. His apartment was a tomb. Dim, still, and too clean. The air hung heavy with the scent of bleach, but it didn't mask the coppery edge clinging to the grout near the sink. He sat on the edge of the bed, shirtless, breath shallow, muscles twitching beneath skin that didn't feel like his. Scar-like markings trailed his collarbone like roots, faintly pulsing. His sheets were shredded deep grooves carved into the bed frame like claws had raked through. No, not like claws. He raised his hands. They were clean now, but the memory of bone tearing through skin lingered. Of fingernails elongating, curving into something not human. His fingertips still ached with the echo. He couldn't remember the dream, only fragments. Red, screaming, a sensation of falling upward, his body doing something his mind couldn't control. He swallowed thickly and reached for the small injector on the nightstand. A pale blue liquid shimmered inside, biometric suppressant. He jammed it into his neck, teeth gritting. The cold rush spread like ice through his veins, calming the heat, silencing the whispers just beneath his skin. Not now. Not yet. He had work in an hour. The lab always smelled like metal and lies, too bright, too perfect. Too many smiles stretched tight over secrets. Jahari moved through security like a ghost, ID scanned, eyes down, heart pounding. No one noticed a slight tremor in his hands. No one asked about the scratch on his cheek, or why he smelled faintly of ammonia and panic. "Morning, Dr. Langston," a tech called out to Chipper. He nodded once, saying nothing. In Lab B, he locked the door behind him, then pulled up last night's logs. Motion sensor data, deleted transit camera feeds near his apartment, scrubbed. Audio pickups on his biometric implant, heavily encrypted, but not by him. He stared at the console. Someone else had accessed his feed. Someone new. A quiet knock at the door. He froze. "Dr. Langston," a smooth, precise voice. "Agent Cray, we need to talk." She stepped inside without waiting for a response. Black suit, no badge, eyes like polished obsidian. Her presence was surgical. He masked the fear behind practiced indifference. "You're not with the research team, no?" she said simply. "I'm with oversight. We monitor anomalies." His throat tightened. "I wanted to meet the man behind the Langston genome protocol," she continued. "Your work on hybrid cell recovery has impressed some very important people." "I'm flattered," he said flatly. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Then she set a small tablet on the table and hit play. Subway footage, nighttime flickering lights. A shadow moves too fast for the human eye. Screaming, a flash of claws. Blood on the lens. Panic, then silence. The last frame froze. Jahari's distorted silhouette hunched in the aisle, eyes glowing. He couldn't breathe. "You should be more careful," she said softly. "This city is crawling with predators and cameras." His voice barely worked. "Why show me this?" "Because I'm not here to stop you." She leaned in close, breath cool as winter. "I'm here to see what you become." She turned and walked out without another word. And Jahari Cord sat there paralyzed. Because the worst part wasn't the footage. It wasn't the blood, or the eyes, or the fact that he couldn't remember any of it. The worst part was the voice in his head whispering, "Finally, someone sees us. I do this strictly for us. The ones that get counted out, the ones they try to leave behind, for the ones with no hope, and most of all, to empower our children to prove that no matter what they endure, they can still become greater than all their struggles. These motherfuckers don't give a fuck if we sink. As long as we ain't swimming, they don't give a damn. It's up to us to use their tactics to our advantage. Let's pump the mainstream with our shit. Let's empower the next generation. Let's give them something positive to look up to, other than hating, beefing, sex trapping, and killing each other. As adults, it's up to us to self-reflect and hold ourselves accountable for the things we do and the things we expose to our children. In this day and age, the revolution begins with the youth. Remember that. May the ancestors watch over and guide us all. Ashe.